Philosophy, Part 1. The birth of Monotheism. The original religion of humans is animism. This open system of beliefs of peoples, first documented by missionaries, was grouped under the term animism by Sir Edward Tylor, who had read Darwin and was interested in what intellectuals in the 1800s called cultural evolution, and he wrote a book called Primitive Culture in 1871. An animistic belief is generally in some number of spiritual beings concerned with human affairs and capable of helping or harming human interests. These spirits are often associated with animals and plants and other elements of the world that people inhabit.
In a time when gods walk the earth, an epic battle rages between the encroaching civilization of man and the gods of the forest.
When the forest has been cleared and the wolves wiped out, this place will be the richest land in the world.
The first monotheistic organized religion was Zoroastrianism. At age 30, 3,500 years ago, a man roughly in the area where Iran, Afghanistan, and Turkmenistan meet, also called Old Persia, was bathing in a river as part of a pagan purification rite. He wrote letters seeing a shining being made of light, who revealed himself as Vohumana, the good mind of Ahura Mazda, or God, and 5 other radiant beings he called the Amesha Spentas, or Holy Immortals. He had more visions and asked these beings many questions, the answers to which comprised the basis of Zoroastrianism. The next monotheism happened when the Jews were captive in Babylon in around 600 BC. They were freed during the rule of the Achaemenid Empire by Cyrus the Great, whom the Jews called Messiah, which means his anointed one. Cyrus's name, as a Greek historian Plutarch has noted, comes from the old Persian word kurus, which means the sun. Cyrus was himself Persian, and his beliefs were influenced by their Persian prophet Zoroaster, also called Zarathustra. So the Jews changed their beliefs, called Judaism, into monotheism after Cyrus, this casually Zoroastrian emperor named for the sun, gave them their freedom.
Animism has many spirits tied to many locations shared in common by different tribes. Paganism has several gods tied to one or several sacred locations. And in early monotheism, there's one god of one ethnicity who is worshipped at one location. The tribes of Israel included the Jews and the Samaritans, and the Jews were the ones held in captivity in Babylon, and while there, the Jewish priests from Jerusalem came to prominence. So when the Jews came back to Judah, they said, let's build our one temple to Yahweh in Jerusalem. But the Samaritans still held that Mount Gerizim was the holy location for Yahweh. So the Jews accused the Samaritans of being pagan. And based off of 2 Kings, in which a Samaritan had done that old unholy act of consulting a rival god, Baal-zebub of the Ekron peoples. So there's a lot of insecurity and intense rivalry of these different local gods of the different local tribes. And it took a lot of zeal and making holy, setting apart, before it was distinct that there was one God and there was no other gods before him.
Animism persists in many parts of the world today. If you've seen a Miyazaki movie like Princess Mononoke, you've encountered the Japanese animistic tradition called Shinto. Their narrative beliefs and mythology, recorded since the 8th century AD, and carried on diligently since prehistory, is celebrated in numerous shrines and practices like harvest festivals. And in the tropical jungles of Papua New Guinea, their original animist beliefs persist. There is extreme heterogeneity of these Melanesian tribes, but a broad trend is belief in Masalai, evil spirits that poison people, and the practice of puri-puri, sorcery. The next monotheism was a splinter of Judaism, my faith, Christianity. Some don't consider it pure monotheism because of the Holy Trinity, but it is. And after that, a little to the south, on the Arabian Peninsula, the Prophet Muhammad founded Islam. Now, the world is 4.543 billion years old. It is 92.96 million statute miles from the sun. It only has a radius of 3,959 miles. The surface of the world is part oceans, part land. The land is comprised of different biomes, or large, naturally occurring communities of flora and fauna, like a forest, or a jungle, or a prairie, or a desert. Some of these biome areas get a lot of rain and have large, regular rivers that feed non-salty or fresh water into the oceans. Some of these biomes get a lot of rain. Some of these biomes only get a little rain, and they're called brittle, and have plants like cactus that can store water for a long time. Such plants are called succulents. And sometimes these brittle climates are made to catch fire, they want to catch fire, like the eucalyptus tree forests of Australia and Tasmania. Okay, let's look at where Zoroaster was probably standing when he was visited by a shining being of light. This biome that he was in is called a desert. Now let's look at where animism, the primitive religion, is still practiced. Papua New Guinea. It's verdant. There are thousands of valleys. Anyhow, did you see that series on the History Channel called How the Earth Was Made? There's a great episode on the Sahara. There are Neolithic human dwellings archaeologists have found hundreds of miles well into the sandy Sahara Desert. And inside those village ruins are goat bones out in the desert, the Sahara Desert. People used to shepherd goats around. They let the goats eat grasses and they'd protect them. Goats are what's called a domesticated animal. The only domesticated animal in Papua New Guinea is a tiny pig. Goats produce milk. And they still shepherd goats all over the Middle East. And they make yogurt from their milk called kefir. It's an active yogurt. I think it tastes gross, but I heard it's healthy. So there's this crazy theory, or rather hypothesis, that goes like this. People in brittle biomes, again, places that don't get much regular rain and are called brittle because they're easy to break, these people grazed the land with goats so much that they broke the land. Here in the United States, there used to be outright battles and much fighting between cattle ranchers and goat ranchers because goats will eat everything, right down to the root bulb, and they'll kill a plant. Cows don't. When cattle pass through an area, the grasses they eat will grow back. They don't kill the trees, but goats will eat the bark right off a tree. Goats can even climb trees. Did you know that? And they'll eat the leaves way up high. Goats eat trees. Greece, the country, was once heavily forested. The Romans had cities in North Africa, like Leptis Magna, near modern-day Tripoli, which is now just ruins in the desert. But these were the lands won from a civilization of the Carthaginians in the Third Punic War of 146 BC. There are descriptions of rich soils. They had aqueducts. It was the breadbasket of the Roman Empire. Yet between then and now, at some point, it seems the soil was depleted and a transition from agriculture in cities to nomadism, being a nomad, and desert occurred. A scholar at The Ohio State University wrote a fine article in 1951 called "The Decline of North Africa Since Roman Occupation, Climatic or Human?", in which he finds that though there is some evidence of warmer periods, the warm air brings low pressure systems which bring rain. He concludes that human activity, specifically agriculture, sufficed to cause the decline of North Africa from a breadbasket to the barren, war-torn, horrible land that it is today. So, people overgraze, go to Libya. Yeah, don't get mad at me. So people overgraze the land until it is deforested and practice monoculture crop agriculture. Until, in a brittle climate, the soil dries, blows away, and the land is turned to desert. And what is missing in a desert? The animals. No flora, no fauna, no shady forest canopy. The world is far less complex. A jungle is dynamic. There are layers. There are many life forms. There's water. A few hundred feet into a rich forest, the wind is still. You can only see the waving treetops in the wind overhead. There used to be many large animals, megafauna, that coexisted with humans, like the giant moa, and animals in massive numbers, carrier pigeons, funny-looking animals like dodo birds, ground sloths, giant armadillos called glyptodons, and dire wolves. Dire wolves. Martial arts imitated these animals' movements. Ritualistic tribal dances. These dance moves come from the art of hunting these animals.
Such sing-sings tell of legendary or heroic events, worldly knowledge, the history of chiefs, elders, and the spirits of ancestors. Some dances depict animals, birds in the sky, the sun, moon, and the seasons, fire and water, and the creatures of rivers and the sea.
Or imitating the animals. Aborigines have festivals where, when this massive bunya pine cone, the tree pine cone falls, they eat the large windfall harvest of the nuts. Okay, first these animals were hunted into extinction, but some, like goats, were domesticated. The goats ate and ate, and people slashed and burned forests back so they could get sunlight in for crop plants and make charcoal for heating. The forests were pushed back and the wind fell to the ground and across the open spaces. There have always been prairies, and these were grazed very heavily until the ground was covered. It was not covered, but exposed to the wind and direct sunlight, which worked to dry up the soil until it could be blown away. These bald patches of ground in forests and prairies opened up and spread. Over thousands of years, humans have simplified our landscape. The Middle East has no great forests, nor has it for thousands of years. And paganism is ritualized neuroses over this continual loss of dynamism in the land of our ancient ancestors. Because pagans sacrificed their animals, their domesticated animals, and in desperate times, their own people. In the hope that this might make abundance return. That there will be a good hunt, a rich crop, and good weather. When the land is reduced to a hard scrabble alkaline soil, when it is rocky or just covered in sand, and there's precious shade to find for your goats, what is left to look to? Lo and behold, ancient man, look up. The sun is shining.
Who loves the sun? Who cares that it makes plants grow? Who cares what it does since you broke my heart?